Listen, there's a question about biology that almost everyone thinks they know the answer to, but they're wrong. And on your CUET exam, getting this one question right could be the edge you need. So are you ready to get to the bottom of it?
So, is it the mother who decides? It seems like such a simple question, right? But believe me, it's a trap. It's a classic myth, and you know what? CUET examiners love to see if you'll fall for it. So stick with me through this entire explainer, and I promise you we're going to nail this concept so you never ever get it wrong.
Okay, so why should you care? Why is this so critical for your exam? Because this topic, sex determination, is basically a goldmine for exam questions. We're talking direct MCQs, match the following, and yeah, even those really tricky assertion reason questions. It's so easy to get the different systems mixed up, humans, birds, insects, but once you get the logic down, you're locking in some seriously easy marks. So let's dive in with the system we're all most familiar with, the human one.
All right, check this out. This is the absolute foundation. In humans, it all comes down to two chromosomes, X and Y. Females have two of the same kind, two X chromosomes. Now here's a key word you gotta know. That makes them homogametic. Homo means same, right? Easy. Males, though, they've got two different ones, one X and one Y, and that makes them, you guessed it, heterogametic. Hetero means different. You have to remember those two words, homogametic and heterogametic. They're going to come up again and again.
So, here's how it all plays out. Think about it. A mother has two X chromosomes, so every single egg she produces, no exceptions, is going to have an X chromosome inside. That's all she has to give. But the father, he's got an X and a Y. So his body produces two kinds of sperm, in pretty much a 50-50 split. Half of them carry an X and the other half carry a Y. So the whole thing just comes down to a coin toss, really. Which sperm gets to the egg first?
And this brings us to the main event, the key takeaway. You might want to highlight this in your notes. In humans, it is the father who determines the sex of the child. Period. This is the science that completely busts that old myth we talked about at the beginning. It has nothing to do with the mother. It's all about which sperm, the X or the Y, wins the race.
Okay, but why? What's so special about that Y chromosome? How can this one little thing hold so much power? Well, here's the secret. It's not actually the whole chromosome that's doing the heavy lifting. It's a tiny, tiny little piece of it, a single gene that acts like a master switch for everything.
And that master switch is called the SRY gene. That's SRY. It stands for the sex-determining region on the Y chromosome. You can just think of it as the boss gene. It's the one that shows up and tells the body what to do. If it's there, one path is taken. If it's not, a completely different path is taken. So here's how that switch works. If an embryo gets a Y chromosome, it gets the SRY gene. That gene flicks the switch to on, and the first thing that happens is the body starts to form testes. Then, those testes start pumping out hormones that basically direct the whole project of male development. But what if there's no Y chromosome? Well, then there's no SRY gene. The switch never gets flipped. It stays in the default off position, and the embryo develops as a female. It's actually a pretty simple but incredibly powerful system.
All right, so we've got the human system down, but, and this is super important for your exam, that's not the only way it's done in nature. Not even close. The XY system is just chapter 1, and you better believe that your examiners want to know if you've read the other chapters too. They love throwing these curveballs at you.
Okay, get ready, because we're about to enter a world where the rules are completely backward from what we just learned. Let's talk about birds. This is a classic trap question on exams, so pay close attention. In birds, and also some reptiles and insects, they don't use XY. They use something called the ZZ-ZW system.
And look at this comparison. It makes it so clear. In this ZW system, everything is flipped. The male has two of the same chromosome, ZZ. So is he homogametic or heterogametic? Right, he's homogametic. It's the female who has the two different ones, Z and W. She's the heterogametic one. And what does that mean? It means she's the one who produces two different types of eggs, some with a Z, some with a W. So in birds, who determines the sex? The female. I guarantee you'll see a question that tries to trick you on this exact point.
Okay, if you thought birds were weird, just wait. Let's talk about honeybees. Forget X, Y, Z, and W. Honeybees, ants, and wasps look at all that and say, nah, we'll do something completely different. Their system is called Haplodiploidy, and it's wild. So with haplodiploidy, it's not about the type of chromosome you get, it's about the number of chromosome sets. The name gives it away. Haploid means one set, and diploid means two sets. That's it. Oh, and here's a pro tip for your exam. Sometimes they'll use a fancy word, Arrhenotoky. Just know that it means the exact same thing as haplodiploidy. Don't let that term throw you. So check out how simple this is. The queen bee lays her eggs. Now, if one of those eggs gets fertilized by a sperm, it now has two sets of chromosomes. It's diploid. And that diploid egg will always grow up to be a female. But what if an egg doesn't get fertilized? It still develops, but since it only has the one set of chromosomes from the queen, it's haploid. And that haploid egg will always grow up to be a male. Which leads to this amazing fact that you should totally remember for your exam. A male honeybee has a mother, but he doesn't have a father.
Okay, that was a lot of information, I know. So let's pull it all together and put it side by side. Seriously, get ready to screenshot this next slide, because this is your ultimate revision chart. This is how we're going to make sure you never, ever mix these systems up on the exam.
Here it is, the whole story in one table. Humans, birds, honeybees. Who's what and who decides. Now, the biggest place students trip up is remembering who is heterogametic. So I've got a couple of silly tricks for you. For humans, just think XY makes the guy. For birds, think ZW, the woman decides. The W helps you remember the female is the one with the different letters. And for honeybees, just remember haplo sounds like half. Males have half the chromosomes. Got it? Okay, quick pop quiz. In which system is the female heterogametic? Yep, birds, the ZW system. If you can burn this table into your brain, you've basically mastered this whole topic.
All right, you've done the hard work. Now it's time for a challenge. This is a top-level question. This is the kind of problem that shows you don't just know the facts, you actually understand the concept. It all comes back to that master switch we talked about, the SRY gene.
So listen to this puzzle. Imagine you have an individual with XX chromosomes. Genetically, that's female, right? But what if a little piece of the Y chromosome, the piece with the SRY gene, broke off and stuck onto one of those X chromosomes? So now you have an XX person, but one of the X's is carrying the SRY gene. So what happens? Think about it. The SRY gene is the master switch, right? So even though there's no Y chromosome, the switch is there. It gets flipped to on. And that means this XX individual would actually develop as a male. It shows that it's not the Y chromosome itself that matters, but that one powerful gene on it. Kind of mind-blowing, isn't it? It just goes to show how complex genetics can be. We'll get into even more of these fascinating cases in another explainer, so make sure you're subscribed so you can become a real genetics expert.